feel like a celebrity in this town.
The obvious question here is, why do a character design analysis of Bayonetta instead of doing the whole game? Short answer, because I haven't finished it yet. Long answer, because as we've discussed before, I don't generally review whole games. The second obvious question, then, is, can you really spend an entire episode just on that? Is there really that much to Bayonetta? To which I would respond, yeah. Have you looked at her? If this were a flesh-and-blood woman, Bayonetta would be what you'd call a project. As in, if you want her, you're probably going to have to work for it. And if you get her, you're really going to have to work for it. Forget all the usual courtship questions of how nice your car may or may not be, how much you can spend, whatever. This is more like prepping for a mountaineering expedition, and the questions are more like, do I have enough hours in the day to get all the way up and all the way down that thing? Should I bring my own oxygen supply? Is there a point where it'll be safe to take time out for an energy drink or a power bar? A woman like this, in those rare instances where they exist at all, are questions of stamina, both physical and psychological. The body says, you don't have what it takes. And then the eyes say, if you don't, she's going to let you know. And trust me, there are a few let's not talk about that. Take a good look at Bayonetta in motion and ask yourself if you can imagine such a creature actually being satisfied by anything short of a 6'7" teddy bear hooked up to a jackhammer. This is more than just endeavoring to make the character sexy, or even making her so over-the-top sexy that she becomes a kind of self-reflecting social commentary, although both concepts are more than spoken for. The history of video games is packed with overly sexualized fan service, and the trade of making animated 3D figures sexually appealing was honed to a fine art long before this. But from a design standpoint, both in terms of personality and physical form, I offer that Bayonetta represents something like a drastic step to the next level, or at least a singularly fascinating mutation. The beauty is a weapon thing has been done, yes, but it's never been taken quite this far without pulling any punches. Often, female game characters tend to break along the familiar lines wherein sexuality increases or decreases in inverse proportion to supposed virtue. Let's be clear. No matter what Rule 34 or certain depths of deviant art have to say on the matter, Princess Peach simply isn't a sexual being. For the most part. Zelda kind of is, but since she's a literal princess, she never really is allowed to let that on or be all that aware of it. Morrigan, on the other hand, is not only a sexual being, she's allowed to be proud and self-embracing of it. Because she's bad, don't you know, so it's okay. Now, that's a dichotomy that's as old as dirt and a double standard that no longer represents anything close to the majority of women in games. I just wanted to get it out of the way early on. For the most part, the girls of gaming are equal parts super tough and super gorgeous, but there's almost always some sort of mitigating detail that's designed to soften the impact one way or the other. For the most part, this comes in two flavors. To save times, we'll call the flavors Chun-Li and Cammy. Consider Chun-Li first. Allegedly, this is the world's strongest woman. She's a mistress of the martial arts, beats up men, women, and beasts twice her size professionally, and is often drawn so as to suggest that she could crush concrete blocks with her thighs. However, notice that when the fighting is over, particularly if she wins, she often immediately makes a personality shift into bouncy, giggling girlishness. That, plus the size-mitigating design elements, such as the outsized bracelets and the big anime Bambi eyes, has the overall effect of making an otherwise adult woman register in your subconscious as something close to a little girl, almost to the point of infantilization. The message, intended or not, is an effective lessening of her sexual strength. Oh yeah, she seems tough, but underneath, nah, just a little girl, wants someone to be in charge and take care of her. The girls from Dead or Alive are almost all the same way. Womanly bodies with the heads of sad, precious moments cherubims popped onto their shoulders somehow. Jiggle physics or not, these aren't women. These are girls. Now, let's be perfectly frank on this, guys. The unspoken appeal of this design type is the subconscious implication that, well, they won't be too difficult to get off, and thus you stand no chance of being found sexually inadequate. Now, whether you recognize it or not, that's why they're designed like that. That's why it works. Cammy, on the other hand, Cammy is working under some of the same strictures, such as her overall diminutive stature and ridiculous pigtails, but it's not reflected in personality. In fact, nothing is reflected in Cammy's personality. She's a classic stone-cold ice queen, generally depicted with a demeanor that says not interested to suitors in general, and male suitors in particular. You'd probably get more physical warmth trying to fuck a snowman. In other words, any sense of threat that might be felt in the presence of an actual woman who was this attractive but also this physically potent is diminished by rendering her almost entirely asexual. Ah, well, she ain't having it anyway. Samus Aran and the non-Angelina Jolie versions of Lara Croft more or less fit into this same spectrum. It's all about backhanded reassurance. It's not that she's not interested in you, she's just not interested. Period. There. Don't you feel better? Now, in light of all that, look at Bayonetta. Overdeveloped, of course, is a word that first comes to mind. Let's be right up front here. Those tits are fucking enormous, and that's quite an ass, pixelated or not. But now look at the whole picture. Unnaturally large, shapely chest? Damn right. But right above that is a neck that's just as unnaturally long and unnaturally graceful. And between that, you'll find properly defined shoulders and arms of proportionate musculature, as opposed to the skinny limbs used to further accentuate the talents of similarly well-endowed game pinups. Speaking of skinny, while she's not exactly rocking a muffin top, Bayonetta's midsection definitely has muscle definition, and a fine example of that long-lost feature of human females that some of us used to call the stomach, back in the days when mastodons walked the earth and supermodels were utilized as something other than human clothes hangers. We then move down to the hips, whereupon the most novel thing to notice is that Bayonetta actually has hips, along with a set of legs which, aside from the continuing trend of proportions, actually do look like they are about as long and strong as they'd have to be to hold up all that torso and assets plunked on top of them. Given how much they have to do with her signature poise and combat style, it's no exaggeration to say that it's Bayonetta's legs, not her much-fretted-over breasts, that are her defining physical attribute. The common observation that she moves like a stripper implies a level of performance-oriented submissiveness that simply doesn't seem to exist around the character. Oh, she moves like a dancer, a kind of high-impact, hyper-aggressive ballerina, really, but the key difference is in the context and intent. Strippers dance for your benefit. Bayonetta doesn't appear to dance or do anything else for the enjoyment of anyone but herself. This extends thematically to the peculiar use she makes of her guns. In terms of actual combat, she's obviously attending the same school of let's watch Equilibrium over and over again to the point of memorization as Dante and Nero, but it's her attitude when glimpsed handling her arsenal where you're going to find the difference. In the general Freudian sense, guns and swords tend to be phallic symbols, meaning that they're proxy representations of, well, dicks. Thus, male characters who make primary use of such weapons are generally seen as either representation or overcompensation of their own being, while women who do the same are often read as co-opting an element of the masculine for their own empowerment. In effect, the usual subtext of a woman armed with a sword or gun is that she's using them to become symbolically male, and thus more powerful. Bayonetta, on the other hand, treats her armaments with casual disregard. She's good with them, but she doesn't seem to have any idealized notions about their importance. They're just tools, extensions of her hands and feet, but nothing more, and she flips them around like something closer to a toy. Phallic weaponry, in her case, is something she enjoys making use of, but holds in no particular esteem. If you want a more obvious example, take the lollipops. While making these Bayonetta's equivalent to Mario's mushrooms is about as on-the-nose as pseudo-sexual visual puns go, do notice how tiny the damn things are compared to her hand and her mouth. Do I need to draw a map here? The whole point of the chick with a lollipop thing and imagery is the subliminal undercurrent that the woman in question is taking a long time deriving personal enjoyment from an act of consumption that looks very much like oral sex. That's why the lolly in question is almost always a big-ass all-day sucker, or at least the size of a blow-pop, to make the man looking at the image and enjoying it feel like a big man. Now, look at these tiny little dum-dum things Bayonetta's always got. That's not even a snack. It looks like she's doing the candy a favor. It's like tossing a pity fuck to a leprechaun. And then, finally, there's the head. When the web first started getting glimpses of Bayonetta, one of the most commonly heard early complaints was that her head looked weird, i.e., it was too small. All things considered, it makes sense. Her head is the proper proportion for an adult woman with this body type, and as gamers, we're much more used to seeing the aforementioned stacked body, giant toddler head combo from DOA and the like. Though stylized for animation, her features are the same way. Normal-sized eyes, a distinctive nose, and an actual mouth. Her default expression ties it all together, eschewing both the conventions of dismissive and submissive. She wants it all right. She's just pretty doubtful that you're the one who's going to deliver, is what that basically says. And there you have it. The first video game woman who's been successfully and unashamedly built to not just be sexy, not just be strong, but be sexually intimidating. Have we seen this in any major game character before? I can't think of one. Soul Calibur's Ivy is close on a design front, but in general personality, she's just another ice woman, a cami. I don't know, guys. I can't shake the sense that this is something entirely new, or at least entirely rare to this medium. Tongue-in-cheek or not, Bayonetta may represent the first time someone's actually made the exhibitionism as empowerment angle work. The concern with female game characters always ends up coming down to what message may or may not be being sent, and leaving aside whether that's fair or not in and of itself, I'd call Bayonetta an interesting step forward. If nothing else, the best example yet of femininity and power not being irreconcilable opposites, even if it is a game and it is kind of kidding around. Someone at SEGA in the character design chair hit this one out of the park, and when you couple that with the fact that the game itself is a winner, it's just a fucking blast to play, I feel pretty comfortable saying Bayonetta is instantly an iconic character, and we'll definitely be seeing more of her. So, that's about all there is for that. I wanted to do something a little smaller this time, lighter, maybe with some gratuitous TNA, for fun, because while I'm always trying to be entertaining, sometimes going deep into stuff, even for video games, isn't fun. Like right now, even as I'm working on this episode, I'm working on the next one. And I can tell you, it's not going to be just for fun. I've got some stuff to talk about in there that I don't like talking about, and that I think a lot of people are going to not enjoy hearing one bit. But it's something I've been putting off, and something I think needs to be spoken on. So, stay tuned for that, and don't say I didn't warn you.